1971 was the year the government of President Jomo Kenyatta had to deal with its first and only serious threat from the country's armed forces. It came shortly after President Milton Obote in neighboring Uganda had been overthrown in a military coup by General Idi Amin in January. Obote had been in Singapore attending a Commonwealth Heads of Government conference when the coup took place. When he arrived in Nairobi, having cut short his attendance at the Commonwealth Conference, the Kenya government would not grant him asylum. He stayed with an old friend, Chief Justice Hilary Ng'weno, for a couple of days, before moving on to Tanzania and finally to Zambia, where President Kenneth Kaunda granted him asylum. The immediate impact of Amin's coup on Kenya was the government's sudden shift of attention to security and military matters. In March, Kenyatta released from detention Oginga Odinga, former leader of the banned opposition Kenya People's Union (KPU). But on May 31st, 12 former KPU members were arraigned in a Nairobi court and pleaded guilty to a charge of sedition. Though all the accused were civilians, it transpired that the men were part of a revolutionary council that had planned to overthrow Kenyatta's government on April 8th. A more startling claim the accused made was that Gideon Mutiso, MP for Yatta in Ukambani, was the Revolutionary Council's chairman. On June 9th, Mutiso was arrested and arraigned in court. He too pleaded guilty, and his confession that the prosecutor later read out in court contained even more startling revelations. According to Mutiso, the Chief of Defence Staff, Major General Joseph Ndolo, a fellow Kamba, not only knew about the conspiracy, but even supported the idea of overthrowing the Kenyatta government. There were public processions all over the country carrying placards condemning the conspirators. On June 7th, the original 12 conspirators were given 11.5-year jail terms each. On June 24th, Mutiso was jailed for 9.5 years. On July 1st, Major General Joseph Ndolo resigned. Kenyatta replaced him with Brigadier General Jackson Mulinge, whom he later promoted to Major General. But a few weeks later, he also abolished Ndolo's old post of Chief of Defence Staff, as well as disbanded the Defence Headquarters, through which the Chief of Defence Staff had exercised his control over the Army, Navy, and Air Force. The bad news for the Kamba community did not end with Ndolo being forced out of the army. Chief Justice Hilary Ng'weno's name had come up obliquely in the confession of one of the 12 accused during the first sedition trial. At the June 27th rally at Uhuru Park, Nairobi, placards were seen calling for his resignation. Shortly after Mutiso named Ndolo in his confession, a former Kenya Air Force pilot, Frederick Omondi, was brought to the same acting senior resident magistrate, S.K. Sachdeva, who had heard the previous sedition cases. He confessed to a conspiracy to topple Kenyatta's government. He too named Ndolo, but in addition, he mentioned Hilary Ng'weno in a scheme he claimed also involved former President Obote of Uganda. Ng'weno resigned on July 7th. A few days after his resignation, Kenyatta appointed Justice James Wicks, one of the judges seconded by Britain to the Kenya judiciary, as new Chief Justice. Nearly 2 decades would pass before another Kenyan African would be appointed Chief Justice. 2 months later, Kenyatta would let Odinga rejoin the ruling party KANU, but he rejected Odinga's pleas for the release of veteran freedom fighter Achieng' Oneko and other former KPU politicians who had been detained when the opposition party was banned in 1969. 1971 was also the year Kenyatta gave out 28,000 acres of forest land to 2,430 Kikuyu families in Njoro, Rift Valley Province, in line with government policy of providing the landless with a permanent place to settle. And in sports, it was the year Peter Shiyuka, with co-driver David Damo, and Ithuku with co-driver Njuguna became the first Africans to finish the safari rally.